I'm rjn.st, productivity consultant and Tana ambassador. When I'm coaching leaders, one of the biggest pain points I hear brought up is this need to go searching for performance information about the people on their team, their direct reports, when it's time for their performance reviews, whether it be monthly or quarterly or annually. And so this simple workflow that I'm going to show you completely solves that, because you can capture the performance note at the time that it actually happens. So when it's time for the review, then you have it aggregated already there for you. You don't have to go searching for them. It's just gathered for you. And Tana makes this uniquely simple. So the pattern I'm going to use to build this is something that I actually show in one of my essential-tana-skills videos as well, which you can go have a look at it. But the idea is that a field exists in the super tag where you're going to capture the information, and then a search exists in the field where you're going to surface the information. So the moment of capture, we want to be able to capture a performance note, which is what I'll call the super tag. You call it whatever you want, but that's what I'm going to call it. And then the place we want to be able to surface that is on your team member, direct report, whatever you want the super tag to be there. I'm going to call it team member. And so I want to be able to capture it when it happens and then surface it when it's time for the review. So we have a field inside performance note. We'll make that field first here, or that super tag first, performance note. And then we'll also have a search inside team member. And I'm going to, since I'm building this on top of my Tana for Action app, you can build it without that, but I'm using that because that's the tool that I use for my productivity in Tana. And I'm going to, I right-clicked on team member and chose configure, and then in building blocks, I'm going to extend person. That's not actually critical for this particular demo, but it's nice to sort of get a sense of how would I make sure that the team member was integrated into my larger Tana workspace and the way I have my system set up. So a field goes inside performance note. That's where we're going to capture this information. So again, right-click, configure tag, and I'm going to, and I'm sorry, it's a little bit, not a lot of room on my screen because I made it bigger for the video, but I'm going to put a field here that is going to allow me to capture whether or not this is a positive note or something that I think needs to be corrected. A concern is what I'll call it. And I also want to be able to capture the person about whom the note is taken. I won't bother putting a field for the node itself because that can just be typed into the main part of the node, and I'll show you how that works as well. But so we really want the main field here, the critical one, is the one that relates to team member. And so I'm going to create that one first, and we'll just make the field team member because it's associated with, a particular team member. And I will right-click that little icon in front of it, and then we're going to make this into, I chose configure field. We're going to make this into what's called an options from super tag field. And with options from super tag, we can choose team member as the super tag. And all that means is when we go to use this field inside performance note, any team member that we've created will be available to us. So I'll create, John Doe here. When I go to create a performance note, John Doe comes up as an option. If I also create Jane Doe as a team member, then Jane Doe is also an option. That's quick, that's easy to capture, so you can do it on the fly. I'm not going to demo it in this video because it's not in my primary workspace that I'm showing this demo, but this is also something that's super easy to configure for voice capture. So you could just be on the fly and you could do the voice capture and it would already be in there. You'd never have to see it or worry about it until it was time to do that performance review. And then we'll also put in here, as I said, a field. I'm just going to call it positive or concern. You call it whatever you want, but that'll serve our purposes here. I'm going to make that configure field options. I always unclick include auto-collected options just to prevent my own silly mistakes from happening. And I'll say positive, and I'll say concern. Now, you can skip the next 30 seconds if you want. One thing I think is always fun to do is, because I'm going to use build title from fields to polish the look of these nodes, is I like to create a little icon here for each of these options. And so we'll say, I'll go and grab a minus sign, or see, a plus sign for the positive. And we'll go and grab a minus sign as an icon for the concern. That one look okay? That's not really the one I want there, I don't think. Well, we'll not get too fancy about it here. I'll put an X. That's kind of brutal, but we'll use that for the purposes of what we're doing. So that will allow me to do a little bit of fancy footwork in the build title from fields here in a moment. So that field is now created, and that means, I'll be able to choose positive or concern. And likewise with voice capture, that can be easily configured to, to choose the one that is most relevant and set that automatically for you. And so that's you remember I said you're going to have fields in the side where there is the capture. This is the performance note, and we'll need to create searches in team member. Before I do that, let me create the build title from fields I mentioned here. Since I want to capture the node itself in the node, I'm going to start build title from fields with name. And you'll note here, if you're in those advanced options, you have this little learn more about title expressions. If you want to know more about the options you have here, you can click on that and go over there. But I'm going to say name. That just means whatever's typed in the node, it will be first and also will remain editable. Okay. And then I'm going to put this little extra. I said I have the fancy footwork here. I'm going to say that this is positive or concern. But I'm not going to leave it at that. I'm going to say dot icon. And what that means, and did I do the positive concern? Yeah, capitalization is correct. What that means is it's actually going to show the icon associated with it. So in this note here, if I say John Doe, had a great phone call with client, and I say that's positive, what'll show up here is that little plus sign, which is fun. And we probably also want to see the name of the person, who the team member up in the node. That way we don't have to go searching for that. And I'm going to include one other thing here as I do that. Sorry, I had a little moment there where my internet had a second, but it's all good now. I'm going to include the CDate. CDate, oh, sorry, there's going to be a dollar sign there. CDate, and that's just the created date. And so I don't need a separate field for that. I can have that just included in the mix there, and that'll show up. So that build title from fields lets me have this nice little node here. All I have to do is set those fields, and that information hops up here into the top. I don't really have to, put that anywhere else or open the node to see the information. Now, inside team member, again, I'm right-clicking the super tag, choosing configure tag, and inside this, you see it has its content here. I'm actually going to create, not inside content, but inside related content. So hit advanced options and go to where it says related content. I'm going to create here a search that looks for any performance notes about this person. Okay, so performance notes, Command K or Control K, depending on whether you're Mac or menu, convert to search node. And now I can say I want to look for any performance note where team member is, and I'm going to say parent. I do that because I want to see John's on John's node, and I want to see Jane's on Jane's node. I don't want to see anything. I don't want to see John's on Jane's node. I don't want to set it for any particular person. I want to set it for the parent node of what that is. And we're actually going to come into this search and put a little more polish on it in a moment, or explain how we might put a little more polish on it. But ultimately, that's all you need. And so now when I go into John's node here, like so, you can see these are the things that come along with being a person in my Tana for Action, except for deleted tasks, which I built in the video that I released the other day. Down here, you can see performance notes, and you can see that these performance notes here are associated with John. If we were to add another one down here, I just hit Shift-Enter. Sorry, it didn't scroll down for me there. I could say that I had a bad phone call with a customer, which, poor John. He's having his issues there. And we'll put the negative or a concern for that one. You can see it has a little X by it. And so that way now, when it's time for John's review, I can see that information right there, and I don't have to go searching for it in order to find that information. It's just there. Okay, so that makes that very, very simple. I could also build a separate dashboard that showed me all positive or all concerns. And I mentioned one other thing. I could come in here to the related content and say I did 90-day reviews. I could specify that I only want to see ones that were created last 90 days. And then that way, now, of course, both of these are created right now, so they're going to show up. But I could say created last 90 days, and that will automatically, exclude anything that's more than 90 days ago. Maybe for a quarterly review, I might want to make it a little longer than 90 just for make sure I catch everything. But that idea that they sort of gradually will just go away on their own is great. I could also say I only want to see ones that are not done, and then leverage Tana's inbuilt done system here to mark it done with Command Enter or Control Enter, and now that won't show up there anymore once I've discussed it with them. But the simple idea here that we can create a field or two in this case inside Performance Note that links to a search or provides the information for a search inside the team member super tag, that makes for a very simple but very effective way to track these performance notes. I mentioned you could build a separate dashboard. I won't build it in its entirety right here, right now. But if I were to do something like that, if I wanted to say, performance notes dashboard, I would indent underneath that, and then I would put searches here that were just sort of like for a group of performance notes. I want to see any performance notes in the last 120 days. I want to see performance notes grouped by person. I want to see that sort of thing. I could put multiple searches here and then create them into different views. I show in my video on delegated tasks some ways that you can create different views if you want to check that one out. But the simplicity of this, and then once that information is in there, the simplicity of creating additional ways of accessing that information makes for a very effective addition to your leadership toolkit. This is exactly the sort of thing that we do in my Tana for Leaders live course. It may or may not be, when you're viewing this, may or may not be something that's available because it's something that comes and goes. And, once it's sold out, then I have those people and we do that course, and then it's a little while before I reopen it. But just know that if you are a leader who needs these kinds of tools and would like to be able to adapt them to your specific needs, because everybody has a little bit of different setup and a little bit of different way they think, the way they work, a different environment, Tana for Leaders is a great opportunity for you to join with me live, get some individual coaching one-on-one, and get some group sessions where we can really tailor a leadership toolkit to your precise needs. So hopefully this performance note thing solves a specific problem for you. And if you have other problems, you can come and find me, and I can help you with those.